Hey EDCI 5306, my name is Lauren Swearingen and welcome to my presentation of my Action Research Project. I am so excited to share with you my story of the action research I conducted on improving reading comprehension for middle school special education students. Let's get started. My action research project focused on reading comprehension. The purpose of this study was to explore what specific research-based strategies would assist middle school special education students comprehend a grade level piece of text. I am interested in this topic because I struggled with reading comprehension as a child myself, and I see it happening in my own classroom, and my goal is to find a solution that will help all students become better readers. In this presentation, I will discuss the literature I reviewed over struggling readers and strategies that assist them in becoming better readers, the methods I used, the data analysis and results, and finally the outcomes and conclusions gained from my action research project. I found 3 authors of literature to be compelling and relevant to my action research project. All of them conducted similar research, searching for answers to the issue of assisting adolescent students overcome the deficit of reading comprehension. First, I reviewed Falk-Ross and Evans' piece entitled Word Games, Content Area Teachers' Use of Vocabulary Strategies to Build Diverse Students' Reading Competencies. This impacted my research because if the students do not know all of the words in the piece, they will not be able to comprehend it. I utilized the 2 strategies of a closed reading passage and teaching how to utilize a dictionary to look up unfamiliar words. Secondly, I studied Jacobucki, Reichard, Ronan, and Tanny's Improving Reading Comprehension by Predicting, Monitoring Comprehension, Remediation, and Personal Response Strategies. These authors administered pre- and post-assessments to distinguish if the interventions they were applying were improving students' reading comprehension. I also utilized pre- and post-assessments attempting to prove that the strategies implemented would improve my students' reading comprehension. Lastly, Littlefield's literature focused on the relations among summarizing instruction, support for student choice, reading engagement, and expository text comprehension. This writing impacted my action research by focusing predominantly on expository text because that is the type of text most students struggle with at the middle school level. I utilized the strategy of summarizing each paragraph and how to engage with a piece of expository text. Now that we know how these authors' works influenced my action research, there are 2 questions that were the driving force behind my action research. They are: 1. What interventions will improve an adolescent learner in a special education program reading comprehension? And 2. What can I do as a teacher to implement these strategies to improve students' reading comprehension? My action research project was conducted in my 8th grade integrated language arts classroom at my school. 5 of my students currently enrolled in my class made up the focus group of my action research. All 5 of my participants are in the special education population at my school and demonstrate a reading deficit based on their 7th grade Reading Star assessment scores. My participants and I met for 1 hour each week over a 4-week time period during our afternoon tutorials. The instruments I utilized during my research were, first, a questionnaire. The questionnaire determined my students' feelings about reading. It was administered to my entire class, so none of my participants were singled out. Secondly, I conducted one-on-one and focus group interviews. The interviews helped me gain understanding of what my 5 participants think about their own reading skills and what their strengths and weaknesses are. These interviews were conducted during the first week in our afternoon session. During the second week, my 5 participants demonstrated their vocabulary skills with a closed reading passage. This assessment let me know if my participants could comprehend a piece of fiction by placing omitted words into blanks to form a complete sentence. Also during the second week, in one of our sessions, my 5 participants were administered a pre-assessment to show me their current level of comprehension. Now that I have collected my baseline data, I implemented my first 2 strategies, building background knowledge and vocabulary, during the 3rd week of my action research. We discussed the importance of knowing all of the words on a page and using resources such as a dictionary to help us when we need assistance, and reviewing what we already know about the topic of the passage so we will have a better understanding of the whole piece. The last two strategies I implemented during week 4 of my action research were previewing the text and summarizing each paragraph. My participants and I discussed the importance of skimming the text, focusing on the title, subheadings, and pictures if they are available. And finally, reading each paragraph individually and stopping and jotting by summarizing each paragraph to be able to comprehend the text. Finally, I administered a post-assessment utilizing all of the strategies they learned to determine if the strategies verified to improve each of my participants' overall reading comprehension. Fortunately, I did not have any ethical issues arise during my action research project. I did my very best to keep my study valid and reliable by informing my participants that the research was voluntary and they could forgo the study anytime with no penalty to them. Prior to the research beginning, I requested permission from my administration and received consent from my participants and their parents. Lastly, all research documents consisting of the data I collected were kept confidential and safe. As a disclaimer, the limitations of the study consisted of only piloting 5 participants. Through the second cycle of this action research, I would trial more students to gain a different perspective on the strategies. The time frame of 4 weeks was a short amount of time, and if I were to conduct this study again, I would like to extend and work deeper with each strategy. And finally, I did not utilize any of the normal accommodations that each of my participants use on a daily basis as a special education student. The outcomes of the data might have changed if I had included their accommodations. Once all of the data was collected, I analyzed all of the documents to determine the results of my action research. First, I analyzed the questionnaires, one-on-one interviews, and focus group interview. I focused on the direct quotes that were audio recorded during our sessions together that stated my participants' feelings about reading. I found the findings of my students' comments interesting because most of them believe they are good readers and like to read. Based on my observations, I see contrasting results as they moan and groan when it is time to independently read during class. Secondly, I was able to observe my 5 participants during regular classroom time to see if the reading strategies were making an impact on the way they approached reading a piece of expository text. My participants chose to use some of the strategies, but summarizing each paragraph in their own words was, in their words, taking too much time, and they did not utilize that particular strategy during class. Lastly, I utilized trend analysis with graphs to represent the results and findings of the average comfort level and reading based on the questionnaire, the closed reading passage, and finally, comparing the pre- and post-assessments. The averages of comfort level with reading resulted in 33% actually feel they can comprehend a piece of text, 15% enjoy reading, and 52% of my participants feel they have competent reading skills. The closed reading passage presented the following scores. Student A scored a 25%, Student B 100%, Student C 50%, and Students D and E scored a 75%. The pre-assessment scores proved that reading comprehension is an issue in my classroom, with these results. Student A, 25%, Student B, 75%, Student C and D scored a 50%, and Student E scoring a 25%. After teaching and implementing all of the research-based strategies, all of my participants demonstrated growth per the results of the post-assessment scores. Student A scored a 75%, Student B scored a 100%, Student C scored a 75%, Student D also scored a 100%, and Student E scored a 75%. I could not be more proud or excited for all of my participants to see improvement and have the feeling of success when it comes to the topic of reading. The significance of this action research project is that reading comprehension is an issue in my classroom and it needs to be addressed. The new knowledge that was gained because of this action research is that the strategies in this study demonstrated to improve reading comprehension. Because they have been proven to work, I will implement these strategies into my own teaching practices in my classroom with all of my students. I would suggest for further research to take this beyond just the population of special education students. This research could be conducted with different populations, such as gender, race, or ethnicity, or private and public schools. I am proud of my participants' outcomes and the conclusions that were made because my students are now on the right path to becoming a good reader. That's a wrap for my action research project, but it is my continued mission and goal to seek a solution for all populations of adolescent students struggling with reading comprehension. I will implement these strategies into my own teaching practices and inform other teachers to do the same in helping students become readers who are both purposeful and active and have the skills to absorb what they read, analyze it, make sense of it, and make the reading their own. Are there any questions?